Would like to present it is that I have 5 main topics to present. Just put it on presentation mode. And after every topic, I will ask you if you have any questions, so you can ask these questions either in the microphone, or maybe you can already type them, and then Laura, please interrupt me and ask the questions.
Sure.
Yes? Good. So these are the topics that I would like to discuss. I'd like to give an overview of the bio-based economy and the policy instruments that apply to different elements in the bioeconomy system. Then I give an overview of EU policy instruments supporting biochemical sectors and linked to national and regional policy implementation. Of course, the instruments will be wider, but my presentation is developed especially to focus on the biochemical sector. Then I discuss the barriers and opportunities related to policy development and implementation. And then I'll give 2 good policy examples. And then I come to the conclusions and recommendations. Policy instruments for the bioeconomy. In the bioeconomy strategy, the bioeconomy was defined as the production of renewable biological resources and their conversion into food, feed, bio-based products, and bioenergy. It includes agriculture, forestry, fisheries, food, and pulp and paper production, as well as part of the chemical, biotechnological, and energy industry. So that's a very wide definition, and you can imagine that that the bioeconomy system is therefore a complex system, and therefore there are many policy instruments that influence this system. The bioeconomy strategy, the most recent one from 2018, also emphasizes that there are 5 objectives for the revision of the bioeconomy strategy. That's ensuring food security, managing natural resources sustainably, reducing dependence on non-renewable resources, mitigation and adaptation to climate change, creation of jobs, and maintaining European competitiveness. So it means that the bioeconomy also, it's seen as an instrument to reach more sustainability on socio-economic development and environmental status. So also these policies influence in that direction. Again, this illustrates how wide the concept of bioeconomy is and how many policy instruments there are. To understand how policies can regulate the development of bioeconomy, we have first created a bioeconomy system overview, and that's what I want to share with you. Well, central in the system is, of course, the biomass delivery chain that starts with the biomass until the end product and uses, and the end uses also provide new biomass, and then the chain starts all over again. So there's a circularity, although not presented here. Activities in the bioeconomy system also encompass the wider food system, the industrial environment, and the enabling environment. So it operates not in isolation, but there are many sectors that also influence on the chain. The different activities in the bioeconomy system have outcomes within the environmental and economic, socio-economic environment, and therefore there's also interaction with the environment and with the socio-economic drivers. The wider food and industrial environment covers aspects such as food and product labeling and promotion, minimal quality requirements for food and products, which can be partly arranged through different policy measures, but also through voluntary certification and agreements between economic actors. The enabling environment creates conditions in which the system functions and covers sectors such as transport, so you see that here, transport, research and development, but also regulation, such as in relation to food safety and environmental regulation. A number of factors that influence activities at the consumer level are also a central part of the system. You see that here. They cover the food and product environment and the characteristics of individual consumers, both of which determine the consumer's relationship to food and non-food bioproducts, and how they manage the waste that comes from their consumption. And the different activities in the bioeconomy system, they have outcomes on the socio-economic drivers and on the environmental drivers. These outcomes are feedback loops that occur between parts of the biomass delivery chain and from the socio-economic and environmental outcomes of bio-based products, such as food security, biodiversity impact, but also climate is influential on the system, but it's also a reason why we have created this bioeconomy approach. So now I'm going to give examples of policies that impact on the different components of this bioeconomy system. Generally, policy measures, policy instruments can be classified in regulations, rules, the law, and then you have economic instruments. There's Francesco, of course, already presented many. And then there are soft instruments. It can be voluntary instruments, but they can also be collaboration instruments or capacity building. And for the biomass supply, examples of regulation are, for example, all the regulations in relation to waste management, forest regulations in relation to sustainable forestry rules, could also be ecological zoning with restrictions, for example, in Natura 2000 areas, the Habitat Directive. Food safety rules could also be part of that. And then there are many economic instruments. Examples of that are support of sustainable forestry management, rural development support. There are many measures in rural development, support to establish first rows, waste fees, return fees, rural development measures, supporting agroforestry or afforestation. And on the soft instruments, there are voluntary standards, for example, in forests, product labels at farm level, capacity building on good agricultural practices, guidelines and advisory support for avoiding waste or waste recycling, simulation, reuse, but also low ILUC certification. If we go to the further in the chain, the logistics, there could be regulations on phytosanitary requirements, support of infrastructure development such as forest roads, and for the soft instruments, setting up collection systems or creating standards for commodities. On the conversion side, so the conversion from biomass to a product, a chemical biomaterial, or an energy product. Yeah, there are regulations regarding the well-known. They focus a lot on energy so far. Renewable energy mandates. Okay. Then we move to EU policy instruments and the link to national and regional policy implementation. The bioeconomy policy is not a policy that recently. Then regarding waste, there are many directives. There's the packaging directive, the waste framework directive, and the landfill directive. And together, there have also been many revisions of these directives, particularly the packaging directive. Actually, a new revision is on its way, but it takes a long time before it's approved by all the member states. So it's already stuck, let's say, in the process for I think a couple of years. But the main principles, there are three principles that guide waste management in the EU, and that need to be followed by the member states, which is the waste hierarchy, the polluter's pay principle, and the extended producer's responsibility. And member states are responsible for national policies and measures to apply the requirements of the directives, so in relation to these three principles. Member states also need to verify compliance with targets set regarding the reuse, recycling, and recovery of the waste, and that is by also setting requirements on the producer pay principle and extended producer responsibility. And this gives you instruments to enhance the reuse, recycling, recovery of waste. And member states have a 3-year reporting obligation on waste management, also in relation to hazardous waste management and how they collect and treat waste oils and how they collect and treat vitamins. So I think one can say that EU policy is most developed in relation to waste management. Although this does not mean that all countries in the EU are at the same level of waste management. It's clearly a divide there between let's say the old EU countries and the more new EU countries that still have to take many measures to improve their waste management system. But they do have the instruments provided by the EU and the instruments that they can translate to national needs. Then there is also the sewage sludge directive, and that specifies how sludge must be treated, under what requirements can be used as fertilizer on agricultural land, and what reporting and monitoring obligations are regarding production and use of sewage sludge. And there is also a 3-year reporting on waste, and this also needs to include sludge management. Then there is policies for instruments for industry, biochemicals, and materials. For example, the REACH instrument that is only focused on bio-based chemicals and materials, and it specifies that these production systems need to comply with the regulatory framework for the management of chemicals. This REACH is managed by the European Chemical Agency, and it integrates, it manages a system, information system, for the registration, evaluation, and authorization and restriction of chemicals. So it's actually not a member state responsibility, but it's in a European Chemical Agency organized. There is also an Integrated Pollution Prevention and Control Directive, and this applies to industrial activities with a high pollution potential. And it issues permits for existing and new installations to prove that requirements are followed to ensure the protection of soil and groundwater and set limits for pollutants. Then we have the directive on industrial emissions. The directive entered into force in 2011 and was to be transposed into national legislation by 2013. But overall, there's not really a policy, strategy, or legislation dedicated to bio-based industry, unless it's biochemical or it falls in this, indirectly the REACH does have influence. What did happen is that bio-based products in industrial biotechnology have been identified as selected markets and selected technologies for which several EU-wide initiatives are now starting up. So, of course, it is a growth sector. The focus is on bio-based industry. So there is a lot of policy development, and there are many instruments that stimulate the development of these. But the legislation is not really a big issue at this moment, specifically targeting bio-based. But it's legislation targeting the chemical industry or hazardous industries that have a high risk of polluting soil and groundwater. Yes, so there are no specific EU policies and legislation in other sectors which traditionally use biomass, such as textile, wooden furniture, pulp and paper sectors, unless they are categorized as high pollution potential activities. And then the IPPC directive applies. But activities in this group are also covered by cross-cutting initiatives and policies such as the Raw Material Initiative, which is a recent initiative which emphasizes the scarcity of biomass and circular economy package. These sectors are also subject to more generally applicable legislation such as product safety standards, and of course, like all products, to internal market legislation. And in the Green Deal, it is announced that action will also be specifically focused on resource-intensive sectors such as textiles, construction, electronics, and plastics. And I'll come back to that. The last group of sectoral policies are related to research and innovation. There's, of course, the smart specialization that encourages and facilitates the setting up of technology and innovation clusters at regional level. There are funds, European Structural and Investment Funds, that Francesca already spoke about and explained about a lot. So there are 5 main European Structural and Investment Funds that can be used for developing smart specialization clusters. And then there is, of course, EU research and development frameworks like the Horizon 2020 program, and there is also the BBI, Bio-based Industries Joint Undertaking, that stimulates innovation, research and innovation, particularly in in a public-private partnership collaboration arrangement. Let me see what I wanted to say more about it. Yeah, in 2014, most funding comes from 2014 to 2020, most funding comes from Horizon 2020 and the European Structural Investment Funds for research and innovation. Further, there is also the European Fund for Strategic Investment support, like infrastructure, research and innovation, and financing SMEs, small and medium-sized enterprises. And this fund particularly provides new financing opportunities to bioeconomy projects with high risk profiles. I think Francesca already explained it. The EU also tries to stimulate this public-to-public or public-to-private partnerships, and that is through the Biobased Industries Joint Undertaking, the BBI. This is a collaboration between the EU, the European Commission, and the industrial partners. And these industrial partners are represented by the Biobased Industries Consortium, the BIC. And the objective of this is develop sustainable and competitive bio-based industries in Europe based on advanced biorefinements that sustainably source their biomass. There's a big budget, 3.7 billion euros, coming from EU public funds and private investments of the companies. Yes, and there is always many rounds in which you can develop, submit new project proposals. Like it functions in the same way as the Horizon 2020 program. But it's very important is that all these research and innovation activities can only be in combination with national funding, and so they need to be financed. So it means that if countries want to make use of these EU resources, they also have to organize well. They have to streamline national innovation strategies and co-financing from national funds, and also provide information and communication about the options to apply for these different funds. That is very important. So this was an overview of the policies that are already in place, and then I shortly explain about what is in the Green Deal and the socio-economic strategy. So the Green Deal announced more ambitious climate change mitigation measures. They announced that there will be a climate law, so that the 2050 climate neutrality is also anchored in legislation at national level. This is announced, so this is on its way. There will also be an adjustment in the emission trading system, particularly to enhance the emission mitigation and to increase the mitigation further as compared to what it is doing now. And there are many discussions about how effective this system is. They also announced adjustments in the regulation on land exchange and forestry, because the countries have to report on the emissions related to that, and there will also be adjustments to that. It is expected that there will be a carbon pricing instrument, which will be introduced throughout the economy, so the whole EU economy. including a carbon border adjustment mechanism to reduce carbon leakage risk. So it means that we also probably need to start paying the carbon emissions related to all the products that we use, whether they are imported or produced in the EU. And there is also higher ambition for clean energy, which is not surprising, of course, because 75% of our greenhouse gas emissions are related to energy. Energy use. Use energy in any activity that we perform. So they are, of course, in line with the RED II renewable energy targets of at least 32% by 2030. But what is also important is that the national climate plans that were submitted in 2019 by the countries, they are being reviewed, and if the ambitions are too low, the Commission announces to force countries to make adaptations, and there will be resubmit. All countries have to resubmit their national climate plans in 2022. So this is also to be expected that many countries will have to revisit their plans in relation to climate mitigation. The details of action beyond the Green Deal are also worked out in the Circular Economy Action Plan that was actually released in March 2020, very recently. So there's more details about how to implement, to make these ambitions that are announced in the Green Deal, make them happen. So one is focus on mobilizing industry for clean and circular economy. It means decarbonize and modernize energy-intensive sectors. Recommendations for this have been developed by a high-level group of energy-intensive industries. So the industries themselves are making recommendations on how to do this. And the idea is that this can also be financed from the returns that are coming from the emission trading system. So with Emission Trading Innovation Fund. Also on plastics, there will be a lot of measures in the near future focused on tackling intentionally added microplastics and unintentionally release of plastics. So we take clothes and tires. When we wash our clothes, we release microplastics, for example. There will be a regulatory framework for biodegradable and bio-based plastics, and it will implement measures on single-use plastics. And the sustainable package legislation is also on the way. I already announced that. It's already on the way for several years, but hopefully it will be approved soon. And the aim is that all packaging in the EU market is reduced by recyclable by 2030. Important projects of common European interest will also have new collaboration forms, which means that industries, they can, large industries, large important projects in which industries participate, they can maybe use large-scale pooling of resources, so that it leads to a more efficient use of resources in large projects. Well, then there is a sustainable product policy legislative initiative on its way. It's actually a widening of the current already existing eco-design directive, but that eco-design directive is only focused on energy products, but now it's widened to all products, and the objectives, so what it should realize is all this. It should be improving product durability, reusability, upgradability, and repairability. So the principles of circularity are to be applied through this new legislation. It will be addressing hazardous chemicals in products and increasing their energy and resource efficiency. It will be increasing recycled content in products while ensuring their performance and safety. It will enable remanufacturing and high-quality recycling, reducing carbon and environmental footprint, restricting single-use and countering premature obsolescence. I cannot explain that aspect. If you have a question about it, I have to look at it. Introducing a ban on the destruction of unsold durable goods, because that is also a very common practice. So the unsold durable goods are just destructive and creating a lot of waste. It should also incentivize products as a service or other models where producers keep the ownership of the product or the responsibility of its performance throughout its life cycle. And now we waste so many products if they're broken, but if we make the producer responsible for it, they have to take it back, and maybe they also develop products that have a longer lifetime, so that can be easily repaired, so that we do not throw away our products so easily and buy new ones. And there should be also rewarding for products based on their different sustainability performance. And what is also announced is measures to avoid false greenwashing. And that will be done by introducing standard methodologies to assess product impact on environment, digitalization, and information access on sustainable and circular characteristics of products. So basically, the consumer should be informed better, and it should become more easy to understand how sustainable a product is. Well, what will happen in practice, we'll have to see, but there will be a lot of measures to improve that information development.